Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. You're here because you want to get a handle on what's going on out there. You want to understand the forces that are shaping the world.
And you want to do it without having to wade through a ton of information, right?
Exactly, so that's why you're here.
That's what we're here for.
We're all about taking these deep dives, and today we're focusing on some special elections in Pennsylvania that really caught our eye.
Yeah, these were interesting. We've got a whole spread of info here, articles from AP News, Fox News, and then we went right to the source, the official Pennsylvania election results website.
Absolutely, so we're going to break it all down for you. We're going to figure out what went down in these elections, what are the big takeaways, and most importantly, what does it all mean for the balance of power in Pennsylvania?
Because these races could have ripple effects way beyond just those districts.
For sure. So let's dive right in. We've got two specific elections we're going to unpack, one for Pennsylvania House District 35 and the other for Senate District 36.
Sounds good. Let's start with that House race.
Okay, so to set the stage, what led to this special election in the first place?
Well, it all started back in January when State Representative Matthew Gurgley, who was a Democrat, passed away, sadly.
Right.
And that created a vacancy in Pennsylvania, House District 35. So they had to hold this special election to fill his seat.
Got it. So who are the candidates who jumped into the race to represent this district?
Okay, so on the Democratic side, you had Dan Gunor. He's a pretty well-known figure in McKeesport. He's a school board member, he's a police officer, and he's a Teamster.
Wow, so he's got a pretty diverse background.
He does. And then on the Republican side, you had Chuck Davis, a veteran and a longtime volunteer firefighter. He's also a fire chief and president of the White Oak Borough Council.
So both candidates with strong community ties.
Definitely. And we can't forget about Adam Kidda, the Libertarian candidate who was also in the running.
Right, of course. So for those of us who don't have the Pennsylvania map memorized, where exactly is House District 35?
So it's located in the Mon Valley region southeast of Pittsburgh, an area that's seen its share of economic ups and downs and has deep roots in the steel industry.
Ah, so a region with a unique history and a strong sense of identity.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got the candidates, we've got the location now. What happened? Who won this House race?
Drumroll, please. The winner was Dan Gonor, the Democrat.
And if I remember correctly, it wasn't even really close, was it?
You're right, it wasn't a nail-biter at all. The unofficial results show that Gonor secured about 63.4% of the vote.
Wow, that's a decisive win.
It was well. Davis came in at around 35%, and Kidda got the remaining 1.6%.
Okay, so a pretty clear victory for Godor. Now, considering how tightly divided the Pennsylvania House of Representatives is, what does this win mean for the overall balance of power?
This is huge because it allows the Democrats to maintain their very, very slim majority in the House.
So every seat counts.
Every single one they're holding on by a thread. It's 102 Democrats to 101 Republicans.
Wow. So this one race really did make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. Without this win, they would have lost control.
I see. And Goner actually had some interesting things to say after his victory, didn't he?
He did. Yeah. He said, quote, "It's overwhelming, but I feel good. My goal was to maintain common sense in Harrisburg and give my district a strong voice. We knocked on thousands and thousands of doors. We worked hard and didn't take anything for granted," end quote.
So it sounds like he really put in the work connecting with voters.
Yeah, definitely a classic grassroots campaign.
It's interesting, too, how he talks about common sense. It suggests he's trying to appeal to a broad range of voters.
Exactly. He's not just playing to his base. He's trying to reach across the aisle.
Okay, so that's the local perspective.
Yeah.
What about the national players? How did the Democratic National Committee react to Goner's win?
Well, Democratic National Committee Chair Ken Martin definitely saw this victory as part of a larger picture. He said that this House majority is going to allow Democrats to, quote, stand up to Trump's mayhem in Washington, and also to protect Governor Shapiro's authority in the state, and basically to keep expanding opportunities for people in Pennsylvania.
So they're really framing this as a win against the national Republican agenda.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to tie it to those bigger national themes.
Okay, that's the Democratic side. What about the Republicans? Did they have anything to say about the outcome of this race?
Well, reports say that they did pour resources into this district. They were really hoping to flip it.
They must have seen it as a key race.
They did, and Pennsylvania House Representative Jamie Barton basically admitted that they were putting up a fight. He said, quote, "No matter who looks good on paper, you've got to have the election. We're not taking anything for granted," end quote.
Right, so they knew it was going to be tough, but they weren't giving up without a fight. Okay, so we've covered the House race in District 35 pretty thoroughly. Now let's shift gears and talk about the other big contest, the Pennsylvania Senate race in District 36. This one seems to have had a more, let's say, surprising outcome.
Oh yeah, this one was a real head-turner.
So first off, how did this Senate seat even become vacant?
Well, the incumbent Republican Senator Ryan Almond decided to step down.
Yeah.
He took a position working for U.S. Senator Dave McCormick.
Interesting. So that opened up the field for a new crop of candidates.
Exactly.
And who were the main contenders in the Senate race?
So on the Democratic side, you had James Andrew Malone. He's the mayor of East Petersburg.
Okay.
And his opponent on the Republican side was Josh Parsons, a Lancaster County commissioner. And, of course, we can't leave out Zachary Moore, the Libertarian candidate.
Right. So how did this district, the Senate district, compare to the House district we were just talking about?
Oh, it's a very different kind of place.
In what way?
Well, Senate District 36 is located in Lancaster County. It's more suburban and rural, lots of farmland.
So a different vibe than the Mon Valley.
Yeah, much different. And historically, it's been a pretty reliably Republican area.
Ah, so this is where things get really interesting. What was the result of this Senate election?
Brace yourself, because this is the shocker. James Andrew Malone, the Democrat, actually won this race.
What? Wow, a Democratic flip in Lancaster County? That's a major upset.
It is. A lot of people are calling it a huge surprise.
So what were the final numbers? How close was it?
Well, the unofficial results, with almost all the votes counted, show Malone with right around 50%.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Early on, there were reports floating around with much wider margins. Like one report had Malone at 70.4% and Parsons at only 28.2%.
Wow, that would have been a landslide.
I know, but it turned out to be much tighter than that initial buzz suggested.
Still a big deal, though, for Malone to win in a district that's traditionally leaned so heavily Republican.
Definitely. And remember, this is a district that went big for Trump in the last presidential election.
You're right. In 2024, Trump won this district by something like 15 to 25 points.
Yep. So for a Democrat to come in and flip this seat, that's a pretty seismic shift.
So despite this Democratic victory, what's the overall impact on the balance of power in the Pennsylvania Senate?
Even with this win, the Republicans are still going to hold on to their majority in the state Senate.
Okay.
There are 27 seats to the Democrats' 22.
So it's a gain for the Democrats, but not enough to change who's in control.
Right, exactly.
So Malone pulled off a remarkable upset. What did he have to say about his win?
Well, he definitely tapped into a sense of frustration with national politics. He said, quote, "Everyday voters are not liking what they're seeing in the federal level. They don't like the chaos. Honestly, we ran a good campaign. We spoke to everybody about what we wanted to do. And frankly, a lot of people preferred us over the alternative. A high priority was lowering the cost of everyday essentials." End quote.
Interesting. So he's really emphasizing those bread and butter issues, the things that affect people's daily lives.
Exactly. And maybe that message resonated with voters who were tired of the partisan bickering in Washington.
Right. And what about Parsons, the Republican candidate? How did he react to the loss?
He took to social media and basically admitted defeat. He said, quote, "Disappointed in the numbers, it appears. We will come up a little short," end quote.
Short and to the point.
He kept it brief.
We also heard from Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who's a Democrat. What was his take on these election results, especially the Senate race?
Governor Shapiro also went the social media route and said that the results in Lancaster showed that voters, quote, "chose a better way forward, an embrace of competence, common sense, and a desire to bring people together," end quote.
So he's spinning this as a victory for a more moderate, pragmatic approach to government?
Yeah, he's definitely trying to frame it as a rejection of extremism.
So we're getting all these different interpretations, all these different spins on what these results mean.
That's politics for you, right?
It is. Okay, so let's back up a bit and give our listeners a little more context about the candidates themselves, particularly their backgrounds and how they presented themselves during the campaign.
Sure. So Parsons, the Republican candidate, he was described as an establishment Republican, a military veteran, and a former prosecutor.
Okay.
And he also made a point of highlighting his connections to the Trump administration, reportedly boasting about visiting the White House 4 times and working with Trump staff on policy issues.
So very much aligning himself with the National Republican Party.
Absolutely. Malone, on the other hand, as we heard in his victory speech, really focused on those everyday economic concerns, things like the cost of living, healthcare, education, those sorts of things.
So 2 very different approaches, very different ways of trying to connect with voters.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so now let's zoom out and look at the big picture. We've got these 2 special elections, one in the House, one in the Senate. The Democrats held on to their House majority, and they even flipped a Senate seat that was considered a safe Republican district. What are the big takeaways here?
Well, one of the most striking things is the contrast between these results and what we're seeing in national polls. Well, national polls have been showing a decline in the Democratic Party's favorability ratings, but then you look at these special elections in Pennsylvania, and the Democrats are actually overperforming.
Interesting. So it seems like there's a disconnect between the national trends and what's happening on the ground in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, exactly. And Heather Williams, the president of the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, she had an explanation for this. She said that state Democrats have been doing so well in special elections this year because voters trust them to prioritize the needs of working families over the chaos and dysfunction that she attributes to Trump and the Republicans in Washington.
Hmm. So they're basically arguing that they're focused on the issues that matter to people's lives, while the Republicans are caught up in partisan battles.
Yeah, that's their spin on it.
It's also important to remember the broader political context in Pennsylvania. Right now, we've got a Democratic governor in Josh Shapiro.
That's right. And historically, the state legislature has been pretty evenly split between Democrats and Republicans, which has made it hard to get major legislation passed.
So these special election results, they don't really change that dynamic all that much.
No, they pretty much maintain the status quo, except, of course, for that one surprise flip in the Senate.
Right. And just a quick reminder for our listeners, these were special elections held in specific districts. These results don't necessarily reflect a statewide trend or predict what might happen in a general election.
Definitely important to keep that in mind. These were very localized contests.
And for those of you who want to dive deeper into the numbers, you can always check out the official Pennsylvania Election Returns website. That's www.electionreturns.pa.gov.
That's where you'll find the final certified results.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say are the key takeaways, the things our listeners should remember about these Pennsylvania special elections?
Well, first off, the Democrats managed to hold on to their slim majority in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives thanks to Dan Gonor's win in District 35.
Right.
And then, in a move that surprised a lot of people, James Andrew Malone, a Democrat, flipped a traditionally Republican Senate seat in District 36.
A real upset.
But even with that flip, the Republicans are still in control of the Pennsylvania State Senate.
So it's a mixed bag, some continuity, some change, but overall, the balance of power in the legislature remains pretty much the same.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
So we've taken a close look at these races. We've crunched the numbers we've heard from the candidates and the political pundits, and hopefully we've given you a clearer understanding of what went down and what it all means.
And saved you a ton of time in the process.
Exactly. Now, here's a question for you to ponder as you go about your day thinking about these special election results in the context of the broader national political landscape. What do you think they tell us about the unique dynamics of state-level politics? What factors do you think played the biggest role in shaping the outcomes of these particular races, and what bigger questions do these results raise for you about the future of politics, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the country?
It's definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.